Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. If you've been watching the channel for a while, you'll know that I'm not a massive fan of French cars. I'm always making disparaging remarks about them. But there are a couple that I would actually buy with my own money. So today I thought I'd hop onto Auto Trader and discuss those few French cars with you. Right, so let's get started. Right, let's look at the list then. So we've got... Alpine, I'd forgotten about that. I've never driven one of these and you really rarely see them, but they are quite intriguing. From the front, I think it's a really good looking car. It's the back angle that I think just doesn't really work. Have a look at this. Although that looks okay actually. From certain angles on the back doesn't look right. And I've seen something that would put me off straight away. Let me show you this. If you look inside, it's got the volume controls off an old Renault Megane. And that is just a step too far for me, so no thanks. Let's get sensible then. Right, on to Citroën. We've got 10,000 to choose from. The 2CV, no, I don't like it. The C-Crosser, absolutely not. You should never ever buy a C-Crosser under any circumstances. The C2, now these are always quite cool, especially as like a first car, it'd be quite interesting. The gearboxes aren't great and the engines aren't much better, but they have a fold-down tailgate like a Range Rover. And they're quite quirky looking, aren't they? I think for that kind of money you could do far worse, couldn't you, as a first car? One Citroën that I would actually buy with my own money is the C4 Cactus. Now I know they're quite flawed, but I do like them. This in my mind is what a Citroën should be. It's quirky and fun. When they try and make a sober car, it just doesn't work. But that with its plastic cladding on the side just kind of works. You've got those pop-out windows at the back which aren't the most practical. It's like the windows you'd get in a caravan. And the rear bench seat doesn't fold in a 60/40, it folds all as one. But I like the way they drive and I like the way they look. You're better off going for the 1.6 diesel like that one rather than the 1.2 petrol. The 1.2 petrol uses a wet belt and then over time that can disintegrate and cause you engine issues. It's that kind of information I wish I didn't know. C5. Now if you can find a well looked after C5 diesel, they're not bad cars. I'm not saying I'd recommend one, but they're not bad. They're certainly very comfortable. This is quirky, the C6. I need to get one of these on the channel. Now they have a 2.7 litre TDV6, which is the same engine that is used in the Range Rover Sport. And look at that, it's the weirdest thing ever, isn't it? I don't think I've ever had one, you know. It's got that weird concave rear window. I mean, it's an ugly thing, but you forgive it, don't you? They've got two. They're strange, aren't they? Maybe they've kept one back for spares. Yeah, I need to get hold of one of those, don't I, for the channel. So I'd probably buy one of those just for its quirkiness factor. The Ds3, now here's another, this is a longer list than I thought. This is another car that I'd actually recommend. I think the Ds3 is quite a good car. They're good looking, good to drive, and the interiors are okay. They're a bit cheap and flimsy on the inside, but if you can find a nice looked after one, they're not bad. They later changed from being a Citroën Ds3 to being a DS. They've separated the brands, and that doesn't make any difference really. On to, what else then? The DS5. Now I wouldn't buy one of these with my own money, but I do appreciate the way they look. And I think if you go for a 2 litre diesel auto, some of them have a ZF gearbox, so it shouldn't be that unreliable. That's got a different colour rear door there. It's a good looking car that, isn't it? And an awful lot of car for 5,795. What else do they make? The Citroën ME? Absolutely not. Citroën C0, look at the state of that. Where are you going in that? They're actually going up in value, you know. A few years ago you could get those for 4 or 5 grand and now they're 7. C3, no. C3 Pluriel, absolutely not. The C3 Pluriel is a convertible car, but in typical French fashion, once you've taken the roof off, they've left you nowhere to put it. So if you take it out and the weather turns, you're going to get wet. C4 Picasso, definitely not. I have nightmares about those cars. C5 Aircross. I don't even know what one of those is. Oh, that's quite good looking, isn't it? I wouldn't spend 25 grand on a Peugeot though, but that's not a bad looking thing. Zara Picasso, no. The Berlingo, no, technically this is a van, but I've done countless miles in a previous life in a Berlingo, and they're really good workhorses. Drove from Spain to England once in a non-turbo diesel Berlingo, which took and age. Citroen C1, that's a good Citroen, because basically it isn't a Citroen, it's a Toyota. It's a Toyota Aygo underneath. 1 litre Datsun engine, it's just as bulletproof as they get. Citroen C3 Aircross, that's a good one. Now, I'd probably buy something like that because for £10,000 you get an almost new car there. And it is quite quirky. Again, it's got that 1.2 wet belt engine, I probably wouldn't have that. C4, I couldn't recommend a C4, although the old 3-door C4 was quite a good looking car in its day. What's a C5X? Oh, that's good looking. I didn't even know that car existed. That's a Citroen C5X. That, in my mind, is what a Citroen should be. It's weird, isn't it? That, I guarantee, you'll see Macron being driven around in one of those. Not sure I'd spend £30,000 on one though. What else then? DS4, no. Grand Picasso, definitely not. Well, that's about it, isn't it? So from that brand, I think I would have a C4 Cactus, or a Berlingo, or a C6. That is about it. Before we carry on, I just want to say a big thank you to today's video sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Surfshark. If you haven't heard of Surfshark, they're a VPN service provider, so they help to keep you safe while you're online, whether that's doing online banking or online shopping. Surfshark protects all your data and your details, so you're far less likely to be hacked by a cyber thief. It also hides your IP address so cyber thieves can't view it, but it's also handy if you watch lots of streaming sites such as Netflix. You know, sometimes when you're on Netflix you try and watch your favourite TV show or movie and it won't let you because you're not in the right region. Well, using Surfshark you can change your location settings so that it thinks you're in that region, then all of a sudden it becomes available. That's what I mainly use Surfshark for, either when I'm here in the UK and I want to watch my favourite American show, or if I'm in Spain and I want to watch something from the UK. You can download the app very easily from the App Store and you can use it on an unlimited number of devices. We're all online a huge amount of time these days and you just don't know how much information you're putting out there, so it's better to stay protected. Especially if you frequently use lots of public Wi-Fi, such as at fast food restaurants, airports, train stations, that sort of thing. Since I've been using Surfshark, I haven't been hacked into or had my details stolen, touch wood. If you click the link below in the video description, which is surfshark.deals/HighPeakAutos, and use the promo code HighPeakAutos, they'll give you 3 months totally free and 83% off. And we're only talking a couple of quid a month here, so don't think it's some big expensive commitment, because it really isn't. Right, back to French cars. Are there any others that I've forgotten about? I don't think so. I think it's just the obvious ones. So, Peugeot. There are 14,000 of them miserable things. 1007. Now, that's a quirky French car with the electric sliding doors. It's only a 4-seater. And there aren't many out there, are there? Again, I've actually driven one of these from Spain all the way back to the UK, a 1.4 diesel. And I think I only filled it up something like once or perhaps twice. It was really good on fuel. That was all it had going for it, really. But I do kind of like them in a funny sort of way. They're quirky. They always had issues with the sliding doors. A friend of mine in Spain had a car rental company and they bought a load of these and they were always off the road. Just wasn't a good investment at all. What else? The 108. That's not a bad car. That's not bad at all. Again, it's the 1.2. The 1.2 is a Peugeot engine, I think, but the 1 litre, I think, is the same as the Aygo. So you can't really go wrong with that. 206, no, they're too old. 207, definitely not. 208, nope. The 306 were good. Back in the day, the old 1.9 diesel, they were a really bulletproof car. I mean, they're too old now, I can't recommend one of those. 307 SW, no. 308, no. The 406, again, this was an era of dependable, solid workhorses. And look at that, the 306 Coupe. Now, wasn't that, I was going to say Bertone, but it wasn't, it was Pininfarina. That was designed by Pininfarina. 3 litre V6, I'd have something like that. I don't know why or when I'd use it, but that's definitely a future classic. But that's not what today's video is about, is it? So, forget that. 5008, no. 607, no. The RCZ, so the Peugeot RCZ, aka the Aldi TT, I probably would have one of those. I quite like them. The 2 litre turbo diesel isn't a bad engine really, if looked after. I'd probably rather have the diesel than the petrol in this case, because the petrol has a tendency to burn oil. But it's quite an interesting looking car, that, isn't it? It's not as good to drive as a TT, but, and the interior is typical Peugeot, isn't it? But interesting. I think that's all you can hope for. And a lot of car for £4 grand, that really. The Peugeot 2008, no, I can't recommend one of those. Definitely not the CCs, just avoid the CCs. You're asking for trouble. Right, don't laugh now, but the 3008 is an ugly car, but I quite like the way they drive. For that kind of car, it isn't bad. Or they're not bad, should I say. You've got a split folding tailgate like a Range Rover, which is always a big win for me. And I like the driving position. You've got the gear stick up here and the armrest, so you're sort of cocooned in it. I mean, don't get me wrong, it isn't the stuff of dreams, is it? But it's not bad. That one's had an accident. 307, no. 308, no. 4007, absolutely not. Same as the C-Crosser and same as the Mitsubishi Outlander, just avoid it. 407, no. The 508's a really good looking car. The new one, I mean, not the older one. I mean, look at that, 2015 for 6795. That's not a bad, I wouldn't have one, no. I'm not going to recommend that, but it's quite an interesting looking car, isn't it? Forget that. Well, I think that's about it then, isn't it? Let's have a look at the old 205. I don't know why, but we're here, aren't we? So we might as well. I learnt to drive in a, well, kind of learnt to drive in a 205 automatic. That's a story for another day. And then last but not least, I think it's Renault, isn't it? There aren't any more that I've forgotten about, are there? Renault, what could I recommend from Renault's offerings? The Clio, I'm not sure, is it the Mark, not the Mark 1, 2, is it the Mark 3, Mark, like that? Mark 4 it might be. Clio, they're not a bad car. The 1.2 is as slow as anything, so you're probably better off with a diesel. The 1.5 diesel isn't a bad option if it's been looked after. They're quite spacious and they're quite good looking. Modus, definitely not. Oh, look at, right, let's look at the Laguna Coupe. This is a really, I need to get one of these on the channel. You hardly ever see these, but for £2,000, what a good looking, look at that from the back. What a good looking car that is. It won't be the best to drive, will it? Front wheel drive, 2 litre diesel. And that's just put me off. Typical Renault interior, but they are good looking. I think it's the kind of car that if you reversed on your driveway, you'd have a second glance as you put your key in the door. You don't see those anymore, do you? The Scenic RX-4. That was an ugly looking car. A jacked up Scenic with a spare wheel on the boot. They were really popular in Spain when I lived there, but you don't see them anymore. Twingo, no, I wouldn't have a Zoe. They're not bad looking, but I hate the noise they make. They're a full EV, but they make this whirring noise. It sounds like an aircraft. It's horrible. One of my neighbours has got one, and every time it drives past the house, it sounds like a bomber flying over. Couldn't recommend a Renault Arcana, or an Espace, or a Grand Scenic. Nope, nope, nope. Twizzys got their purpose, haven't they, if you live somewhere sunny, but not in Manchester, I'm afraid. The Renault Wind isn't a bad car. It's not great, but it's all right. If you want a cheap little fun car, I'd rather have one of those than a Peugeot CC, because there's far less to go wrong. You just lift the roof out, so no complicated motors to fail. Can't recommend a Megane. Can't recommend a Koleos. Can't recommend a Kadjar because it's the same as a Qashqai. Oh, the Captur. This is one of those cars that I actually quite like. I wouldn't have one, but every time we get one in stock, I'm always quite sort of smitten about it. Maybe smitten's too strong a word, but I do quite like them. So have a look at this. This is £8,000. Sounds like a lot of money, that, doesn't it, actually? £8,500 for a 2015 1.5 diesel. I just think they're a really practical car. You sit up a little bit higher, but they don't look like an OAP mobile. You get a decent sized boot with a shelf in the middle. Yeah, that's not a bad car, actually. So is that all we're saying then? Out of all these French cars, we've got the Renault Laguna Coupe, the Captur, the Clio, possibly the Wind. There is one more French brand that I've forgotten about. People often think that it's Italian, but it's actually French. Well, it's actually German now, isn't it? But Bugatti. So we've got the Veyron, that's it, £1.2 million. See, I wouldn't even buy one of those. If I won the lottery tomorrow, I wouldn't have one. It's ridiculous. It was the fastest car in the world. I think it's capable of 400 kilometres an hour, but No, it's not for me. So, even when the French make a really good car like that, I still wouldn't have one. Well, I think that's about it then. They would be my choices for a French car. There are a couple there that I've forgotten about. The Renault Aventime and the Renault Velsatis I couldn't recommend for obvious reasons, but they're quite quirky. I can't think of any more. But if you think of any, let me know below in the comments. So yeah, cheers guys, thank you once again for watching. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done already. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'll leave the link below. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Cheers guys.